Hi everybody, welcome back to Capricorn Radio. This is your host James, and delighted to have a super interesting guest today. And we're going to be talking to Mr. Gerald Celente. He has developed a global economic methodology to identify, track, forecast and manage trends. And he's a political atheist, encumbered by political dogma, rigid ideology or conventional wisdom. Celente, whose motto is think for yourself. He observes and analyses the current events, forming future trends for what they are, not for what he wants them to be. And while Celente holds a US passport, he considers himself a US citizen. And if you want to get into the trends, you've got to go to the website TrendsJournal, TrendsResearch.com. You'll find the TrendsJournal there. No one has been so right so many issues so often, and if you want to anticipate change, take proactive measures, seize opportunities and develop profit strategies, subscribe to the Trends Journal. I've just been reading the Trends Journal and they are super fascinating. If you want something that's current, realistic and true, you got to get your hands on a copy of these. So without further ado, let's bring on our super enigmatic, exciting guest today. Hi Gerald, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, James.
Wow. What strange times we are living in, Gerald. It's all going off on the planet at the moment, whether you're in Europe or America, perpetual war, economics, stock markets, it's all kicking off, Gerald.
Yes, it is. And it's very simple. If we keep following the leaders, whether it's in the European nations or the Arab Little League, and the United States, you can see where they're leading us.
Sure.
You know, by their deeds you shall know them.
Mm.
And if you look at the deeds, you can see how we got here, where we are, and where we're going. Mm. There's nothing that you could look back to that they've done that you could be proud of, that could point to success. How about that war in Iraq? Wasn't that a beauty, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Based on lies.
Yeah.
So what? That's okay. We're still there, and now NATO's back in charge, killing more people. How about that war in Afghanistan? Oh, that's a lovely one too, isn't it? Yeah, the longest war in American history. For what? You know, for more lies. How about, Libya? Well, they destroyed that country. Why? Well, because they felt like it. How about that? The most prosperous country in Africa, and now it's in total turmoil because of Sarkozy and Cameron and Obama and the rest of the crew. So you could see where they're leading us now. NATO's back in Iraq, and they're not leaving Afghanistan. And now the United States is bombing Syria. El Presidente could declare what he wants to do, and he does it. Not only him, the one before him, and the one before him. Mm-hmm. So it's a world at war, only getting worse.
Yeah, this perpetual war, it's always done under the banner of liberation or democracy. And is there even any evidence that these democracies have been set up? And they're not Western democracies anyway. There's some loose idea of democracy.
Well, I think actually they're very emblematic of Western democracies. I mean, they're perfect examples. Mm. Look what's happened to America. They robbed us of our constitutional rights and our Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
It's no democracy anymore. They're doing the same thing over there. Look at what happened in France after the attack in January.
Oh, yeah.
They robbed the people of their rights. Look what's going on over there in the UK.
Yeah.
Robbing the people of their rights. What's going on in Belgium, in Italy. One country after another, Australia to New Zealand. Oh, they're perfect democracies. They resemble the fascist dictatorships of the countries that I mentioned. Mm-hmm. And that's all they've become. Because I could prove it. This isn't capitalism anymore. It was killed with 4 words. Too big to fail in austerity measures on your side of the pond.
Sure.
There's no such thing as too big to fail in capitalism. The merger of state and corporate powers is called fascism. By definition. And by definition, you have fascists leading these countries because they're the ones that are robbing our money and giving it to their buddies.
Wow. I think I try to wake people up as much as I can, Gerald, and I'm doing shows like this and talking to people like yourself, and I think we're slowly marching one step forward, and I'm talking about the global community, slowly but surely to 1984, to that novel. That's where we're heading if we don't wake up and wake up the masses.
Well, it's there already. I mean, you listen to these You know, the names of these wars, Operation Enduring Freedom. I mean, it's one Orwellian name after another. Yeah. And Orwell never dreamt of this. Well, we got these lowlifes listening into everything that we do in our life. Who are these people? Who anointed them to watch us, to listen to us, to follow us? No, it's Orwellian already.
Let's talk a little trends and maybe future predictions, Gerald. I know I don't got you very long today, so what's going on? But maybe talk Russia and Ukraine. Is this all settled down now, or is this going to flare up again?
Again, anybody that wants to look at the truth, just look at YouTube.
Yeah.
Go to put in Victoria Nuland, N-U-L-A-N-D. She's the Assistant Secretary of State for the United States. And there she was at Maidan, the protests, and handing out cookies in December of 2013. And then she appears, Washington Press Club, December 2013, brought to you by Chevron and Exxon. And here she is saying that the path for Ukraine is the one set forth by the International Monetary Federation, the IMF, the International Mafia Federation, and that Ukrainians are Europeans. And that's the path that they should take. So that's news to all of those people. That was Ukraine, 300 miles, from Moscow, the border. Yeah. And she's saying that they're somehow European. So this was an overthrow by the Western governments, particularly the United States and the European Union. So it's just another takeover, and people don't know the facts, and they listen to the propaganda. Look, people ask me as a trend forecaster, which business should I get into? What's a good career path?
Sure.
Propaganda. Propaganda is the way to go. You could do it very cheaply. It could be really stupid, and you get great results.
Yeah.
It's proven time and time again.
I think
so what's going on in Ukraine, I mean, it doesn't anybody get it in their head. You don't mess with the Russians. I have a chart that someone gave me, a graph of Napoleon's march to Moscow. And it begins at the Polish border. He starts with 422,000 men. By the time he gets back, he has 10,000. Hitler launched the greatest military offensive in world history against Russia. Mm-hmm. He lost. You leave the Russians alone. They're not doing anything to anybody.
Yeah, true.
And all we hear is about how Russia's invaded Ukraine. We hear about how Russia is arming the troops. We hear about how Russia is sending tanks and military equipment. How come they can't show us any photographs of this?
Yeah.
In the age of selfies, they can't show us one photograph. You know why? Because it's lies. Just like the lie that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al-Qaeda. Just like the lie that Assad used chemical weapons against his people. Just like the lie that Gaddafi was slaughtering his people.
Mm-hmm. From the time of the Arab Spring, and I watched the media being used really since the inception of the Arab Spring was really done on social networks and media. And like you say, it's very cheap, very effective. And since that, I mean, it's out of control now. It's like every day there's just something propaganda in the news. Totally with you on that one, Gerald. Let's talk Gaza, Israel. I mean, I got friends last year with doing humanitarian aid. What a deplorable, despicable event in our history of this century. I mean, really, that happens. And I'm a humanitarian, Gerald. I'm always looking for some sort of a peace, but I don't think we're going to ever see peace there. What is it about Israel and the dynamic there that doesn't get reported worldwide for what it is?
Well, first of all, this whole thing about Israel to begin with, it's a colonization. You go back to the late 1800s, early 1900s, Europe was colonizing countries around the world. And that's all it was. It's a colonization. And look at the world, look at the leaders of Israel since the founding. Name them. Ben-Gurion, Golda Meir, Begin, Sharon, Omer, Netanyahu. One after another, name their names. They're all Ashkenazi. These are Eastern Europeans that converted to Judaism near the end of the first century. So you can't, if you say that they're colonists and they have an apartheid state, don't call me an anti-Semite. Save it for somebody else, because they're not Semites. They're Ashkenazi. The Semites are the Palestinians. Semites are people from the Mesopotamia region.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is a colonization. It's an apartheid state. They get away with murder, literally. How many did they kill hey, they killed 17 people in France in January. How many did the Israelis kill over there in Gaza in September and August? Only 2,200. But they're Palestinian women and children. They don't count. Their skin is dark.
Yeah.
We're Ashkenazi.
Yeah.
So you look at the hypocrisy. As we're speaking, I was just going to Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper. Now, this is an Israeli newspaper. Here's the headline. Israel demolished homes of 1,177 Palestinians in Jerusalem and West Bank. Do you know when? In 1 year, in 2014. Could you imagine if they took down one synagogue? Oh, my God, it's a Holocaust. But slaughter Palestinians, destroy their homes, it's okay. It's hypocrisy. It's hypocrisy at every level. So it's not only there, it's what they're doing throughout the Middle East. It's hypocrisy in invading Iraq. It's hypocrisy invading Afghanistan. It's hypocrisy in bombing in Libya and Syria. It's hypocrisy. You have sick people in charge, sociopaths and psychopaths, and everybody bows down, sucks up, rolls out the red carpet every time they show up and salute.
Sure. Well, let's get into some markets, Gerald. What's going on in the oil industry? Is it going up, going down? Are we going to see any sort of a stabilization there?
It's hard to say. As we see it, it's a supply and demand issue. It's not only oil prices that are down. You look across the board, copper prices, nickel.
Mm-hmm.
You could buy a ton of iron or a rebar, finished product, reinforcement rod in China, cheaper than to buy a ton of cabbage.
Wow.
So it's one product after another, commodity product, that is hitting 5.5-year lows because there's a global slowdown. You look at all of these countries cutting interest rates and hoping that low interest rates will help them export more product. There's no recovery. It's a cover-up. All of this money that's been pumped into the system has only enriched the filthy rich. And that's not 1%. It's 0.01%. And according to Oxfam, by 2016, 1% will own as much more wealth than 99% of the rest of the population. So that's what's going on. It's a takeover. It's a takeover at every level. They've taken over the governments and robbed us of our rights. They've taken over the economies with multinational, transnational companies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is in the United States. It's worse than the times of the robber baron. According to the Pew Research Center, the gap between rich and poor is the widest in the United States right now than any time in its history. And you go over to Ireland. Look what's going on over there. You were forced to bail out banks for making bad debts. They call them austerity measures. They give you water taxes. They increase your retirement age till after you die. They rob you of your pension and benefits to bail out the banks. It's fascism. Get it in your head, everybody. Call it what it is. Stop this democracy baloney. It's a takeover. And it's Slavelandia worldwide.
I can see why you're branded as a political atheist, because it's a natural state, and I'm with you, Gerald. I'm totally with you. I never believed in this political democracy that we're force-fed. What you mentioned metals as well, obviously the important one of gold. Do we see gold as an important? I know there's a lot of panic. People were going to invest in gold because they thought the financial markets were all going to collapse and money was going to be worthless. Is people in that state of mind still, Gerald, or should people be worried about gold?
A lot of people are, and a lot of people aren't, because they're manipulating the markets. One of our top trends for 2015 is the grand manipulation. Mm-hmm. The other one's bankism, and the grand manipulation has been written by Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, former Treasury Secretary under Ronald Reagan. And bankism is written by Nomi Prinz, who wrote the book All the President's Bankers. Mm-hmm. So when you look at the grand manipulation, this isn't a conspiracy theory, it's a fact. They rigged the Forex markets, $5.3 trillion worth of currencies that are traded each day. It's rigged. The facts are there. They caught the people. But unlike you and me and the rest of the people listening, when we get caught, if we get caught doing a crime, even if it's a minor offense, they enforce it to the letter of the law. But when the banksters do it, the bankism cats, they get a free ride, just like they got for rigging the Forex market. They get a fine and everything's fine. Nobody goes to jail. Same thing with the LIBOR rates. That's the interest. The interest rates have been rigged to the tune of, since the time they found it, $700 trillion. That's right, $700 trillion worth of rigging. Who paid the price? They paid some fines, and that's it. So they're rigging the gold market? Of course they are, because everybody knows that they're printing money nonstop. You just saw it with the ECB now with their quantitative easing. Who does it enrich? It enriches the very rich. The only reason the stock markets have gone up, this is a fact, because they're loaning money out for virtually nothing. The big companies are borrowing, and then they're buying back their stock on it and driving the prices up. And they're doing merger and acquisition activity because of the cheap money is now back to 2007 levels. So when you look at the rigged game, people say, why would I want dollars, Deutschmarks? Well, they don't have those anymore, but krona or pounds or any other currencies, yen or yuan, when they're printing all of this cheap dough. Why wouldn't I want gold? So they're putting down the price of gold because people would get hip to the fact that they're just printing this money out of thin air that's backed by nothing and printed on nothing. It's only digital dough. So we believe the prices are being manipulated, and at some time they're not going to be able to manipulate it anymore, and gold prices are going to go up. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a forecaster.
For sure.
And for me, gold is for my golden age. I don't want bitcoins. I don't want bucks. I want bullion.
I think that bitcoins are another thing that's a manipulative. It's a very fictitious origins of this Bitcoin business. But let's talk oil and gas. I mean, you mentioned Ireland there. We should be one of the richest countries in Europe because of the gas fields off the coast of Cork. But for some shady deal that was done and then probably a few envelopes changed hands, it's not in our possession. I don't know how that ever happened and how that's still in existence. But with respect to the Atlantic, I mean, are we going to see oil in the Atlantic, oil drilling out there?
You know, it's very expensive, and with prices this low, you know, it's hurting a lot of companies. For example, in the States over here, almost 20% of our junk bonds are energy related. And with the energy sector taking a hit, these junk bonds are very volatile. They could cause a financial crisis. Go back to 1987, just before the financial crash of 87. The year before was low oil prices. And that was the canary in the mine shaft. So I believe we're going to have dominant energies that are not going to be fossil fuel. It's going to be beyond wind, solar, geothermal, or biofuel. And that we're still using fossil fuels in the 21st century is a fossil idea. So, as a matter of fact, that's one of our top trends also for 2015.
Sure.
And it's more in detail in the TrendsJournal what they're going to be. And ironically, as the price of fossils are going down, the new energies, they're becoming the dominant energies, are taking place. So it's kind of ironic that it's happening at the same time.
Yeah. I quite enjoyed the article on the TrendsJournal for the alternative energy, Gerald. Great to see that making a comeback. And to be honest with you, this part of the world, it's my background in engineering, the alternative industry, but you know, a lot of people got very disengaged when they brought out the carbon tax because they felt they were just being manipulated. They increased, the government, British anyway, they increased all this interest in alternative energy, and then they slapped them with the carbon tax, and people just lost interest. And Are we seeing a comeback for alternative energy now? Is it definitely going to be a driving force?
Yeah, we believe it is. And again, we have it in detail. Our science editor, his name is Ben Davis. He's one of the top people in the world and real leading edge on a lot of breakthroughs. And we have them listed what they are. This whole carbon tax thing, this was invented by Clinton and Gore. It's a deal for the stock market. That's all it ever was. When you go back to the early 90s and there was a strong environmental movement, you know, he BS'd the liberals and they bought it like they buy the rest of the crap coming from the Democrats. They don't want to call their commanders and thieves any different than the Republicans, so they always make excuses for them. And the carbon tax is a whole rigged game for Wall Street. And
for sure.
It's just a shady deal that's enriching the very rich and not doing anything to save the environment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, you mentioned a little bit of history. I love history, Gerald. Do you think we can learn from our history of whether that's deep antiquity or recent history to look for the future? Is that a cliche?
Yeah, it is, because, you know, history keeps repeating itself. It only has different players in it. And again, look, there are a lot of positive things going on. You could see them happening in Greece with the Syriza party.
Oh, yeah.
You could see it happening in Spain with Podemos. You can see it happening throughout the world. It's a time to replace the corrupt, entrenched governments with something new and fresh, something that has a moral base, not a base of money, greed, and corruption. And the entrenched parties, that's their code words.
Mm-hmm.
So it's up to the people. When the people realize that they have the power and not these little boys and girls that play chancellor, president, and prime minister, then they'll rise to a greater height. But that's not going to happen until people find the courage within themselves to make it happen.
Sure. I think you're right, Gerald. I think I see that social struggle getting a bit of momentum and a bit of success, and it's only when people realize that they can take on the big guys and win. They have the power. They just need to start the momentum. Gerald, we're out of time.
I just want to stop you at that. They're not big guys. That's the whole thing.
Sure.
They're little men. They're little men that are only tough when they have a bunch of their goons around them to protect them.
Sure.
Show me a man among them. Cameron? What man? You can see him leading the charge? Obama? What, between games of golf, pool, and basketball, leading the charge? Holland? What, are you kidding me?
Wow.
So they're not men. They're not big men. They're big mouths. Big mouths with little cojones.
For sure, Gerald. Gerald, TrendsResearch.com is the name of the website. Of course, you know, you do the TrendsJournal. It's not it's a magazine that pinpoint today's events and for the future trends and how they'll affect business, career, family, and future and your life. So this is an important Trends Journal to get your hands on. Gerald, I really thank you for your time today. I know you're a busy guy, and I really appreciate you for coming on Capricorn Radio.
Well, thanks so much for having me, and all the best to you.
Take care, Gerald.
Okay, James. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.